Hi guys, it's Kristen at Food Chain, and today we're going to talk a little bit about knife skills and knife safety. When we're working in the kitchen and we're doing recipes, a lot of times we have to cut up our ingredients. They don't always come the way that we need them for the recipe, so we're going to go over kind of the different knives that you might find in your kitchen, as well as how to use them safely, and then how to hold them when cutting and what some different cuts are. So to get started, let's talk about our knives. So I have a knife block. A lot of you might also have a knife block, and it usually comes as a set. And so the different knives that are included, we have this big one, which is a cleaver. This is used for meat and cutting meat. I don't really use this one that much. You've got a serrated knife. So the serrated knife is usually used on breads and things that are softer so it can cut through without crushing them. We have a smaller kind of chef's knife. The bigger chef's knife, and this is probably the knife that I use the most. You can see it's about 8 inches. And this is pretty typical that a lot of chefs will have in their own kitchens. And then down here we have these 3 smaller knives, and these are all paring knives. So I kind of want to show you so you can see how different. So this one is rounded here on the top, and then the sharp is on the bottom. This one's rounded on the top, and the sharp part on the bottom is also a little bit rounded, so different than the other one. And then this one is rounded on the top, and it's also rounded down the same way on the bottom. So I'm going to show you how to use these paring knives. These are things that you don't necessarily want to use for cutting up big ingredients like a zucchini. So instead I'm going to show you on a peach. So if you're peeling a peach, this knife is going to be probably one of the best ones. So you actually put your finger on here because this is going to help to control, and you do this only with the smaller knives, not with the bigger knives. And then when you hold the peach in your hand, your thumb is going to touch the peach and your finger is going to pull the knife along so that you can peel, okay? So this is going to be really good on things that you have to peel, like a peach, a potato, an apple, a pear, that sort of thing. So I'm going to set this aside really quickly. And I'm going to show you the serrated bread knife. So I have a bagel here, and bagels can be really difficult to cut because they are round. There's not a flat point on the food, and usually when you're cutting, you want to have a flat part on the bottom that's going to sit on the cutting board and prevent it from moving. But in this case, we don't have that. So we're going to take out our serrated bread knife, and you want the claw, okay? So claw as you hold this bagel, and then your knife, you're just going to start to cut and go slowly. Don't try and go really fast. With serrated knives, don't put a lot of pressure in the beginning because especially if you're doing bread, it will smush the bread. And so by going slowly and also rotating the bagel, so now I'm turning and I'm repositioning my hand so that my fingers are curled in, and now I'm slicing down. And that way you make it all the way through, okay? So that is the bread knife. I'm going to set that aside since I need to wash that now. So we're going to talk about the chef knife. This is a knife that you find in every single kitchen. Every restaurant is going to have several of these. At Food Chain, we have about 20 different ones, which is important when you've got a lot of people cooking. You don't want to use the same knife. You also don't want to cross-contaminate. So if you are cutting vegetables, you're cutting meat, you're cutting fish, different things, you don't want to use the same knife for those unless you are washing it and sanitizing it between each of those steps. So let's first talk about how do we carry this knife in the kitchen. So normally my knife block is not right here next to me where it's convenient. It is located over here in the corner, and I'm sure most of you have knives maybe not next to where you're going to be using them. So how do we get this safely from that part of the kitchen over here where we need it? And if you think especially in like a restaurant or a big industrial kitchen, you know, they do have lots of knives. People are walking around with their own knives. So how do you do it safely? Do you carry it in front of you? Do you carry it up? The correct answer is you want the sharp blade pointed down and the sharp cutting part pointed away from you, and then you want to hold it down here by your side. You don't have to touch it to your leg, but you definitely want it close so that if you're walking and somebody runs into you and runs into where this knife is, it just pointed away and it's not going to cut them, it's not going to hurt you. This also allows, if you lose your grip, it will drop straight down. One of the things that you want to make sure in the kitchen is if a knife ever falls, do not try and catch it. You just want it to fall. So you're gonna move out of the way and let it fall and hit the ground and then pick it up and wash it. Because if you were to reach out with your hand and try and stop it from falling, what do you think is gonna happen? You're gonna get hurt. One of the things that's really important about these knives, especially in restaurants and kitchens, is that they need to be sharp. One of the most dangerous things about a knife can be trying to cut things with a dull knife. So when your knife is dull, it's going to be a lot harder to slice through things. You're going to be putting a lot more pressure when you're pressing down. The knife might slip because it's not cutting through what you need it to, and then you're at potential for cutting yourself or causing an accident. So in restaurants, you see a lot of chefs will carry their own knife sets, and that is very typical because chefs are very particular about what knives they like. Once you find a knife that you like, you a lot of times don't want to trade it out for something else. You're comfortable with your knife, you know how to use it, you can work quickly with it. So that's why it's kind of important to have your own. So let's talk about how to use this knife in the kitchen. We touched briefly on this. Some of you who are in the cooking classes in the fall, we were using lettuce knives just because we were in a school environment, so I couldn't bring the real knives with me. And so the lettuce knives are really good for cutting through lettuce, cutting through herbs, things like that, but it's not really going to be great for cutting through like carrots or things that are a little bit more tough. We made it work, but you really do want a chef's knife. So to start off, your hand, so we do have this handle and then we have the blade, and you don't necessarily want your hand to be like this because it can still move around, right? And so if you're chopping fast, like there's a lot of movement in the knife, you really want to make sure that you have control of this blade. So you're going to take your thumb and your index finger, you're going to pinch. So you're going to pinch the top of the blade and then wrap your fingers around like that. And that way you're holding onto the handle and you're also holding onto the blade. This finger, just like with the bagel, we're going to claw it. So you're going to curl your fingers in like this, and that's what's going to touch. So we're going to chop up a zucchini here. So you're going to curl your fingers like this, and then the chef's knife, since you have a big knife, what you want to do is you don't want to go straight down into it. You want to have a point on your cutting board that the knife can touch down, and then you use gravity to actually lower the knife. So if my knife touches the cutting board and then I just let it fall back, it is going to go through that zucchini and make it a lot easier. This is also what happens when you see chefs that are chopping things really, really fast. They're not lifting their knife off the cutting board. They're actually keeping it in the same place, and they're letting gravity kind of do the job. The reason we also have our fingers kind of curled like this and in a claw is when you see those really fast videos, chefs are actually touching the knife to their knuckle just to kind of get a placement on the thing that they're cutting. And since your fingers are curled under, your nails aren't, and the tips of your fingers aren't pointed out, so the knife is never going to touch those. It's just gonna go straight down. Okay, so we're gonna do this a few times and go slowly when you first start. I do not like to chop fast. I like to make sure that I know what I'm doing. You also, I know that I'm looking at you when I'm talking, but you really want your eyes to be on the zucchini as you're cutting. Each time that knife goes through, you want to make sure that it is touching, or that your eyes are on what you're cutting, so that you're not losing focus and you can really stay a lot safer that way. Okay, so we just cut these into a few little round pieces. So that can be a slice. When you read a recipe and it says to slice something, just straightforward, cut it down the side. So if it is a zucchini, it's going to end up in like little round pieces. If it's a tomato, it's also going to end up round as you slice it.